Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
In relation to the situation in Sudan, there are areas of responsibility of the Security Council and areas of responsibility of the Secretary General. In my area of responsibility, I reaffirm to the Council my full confidence in Volker Perthes as Special Representative of the Secretary General. It's up for the Security Council to decide whether the Security Council supports the continuation of the mission for another period, or whether the Security Council decides that it's time to end it. Thank you very much.
I hope so. Do you think it's time to change the mandate?
Do you think it's time to change the mandate?
Perhaps we have first to stabilize and then to think about how we can change the mandate or whatever, or and how the UN presence in the country can be effective. But we're not there.
Yeah, do you support Volker Perthes?
Look, we support UNITAMS.
So is there going to be a transition to a civilian government still?
That I cannot tell you.
But do you need
Too early to say.
There's no transition.
That I cannot tell you. We are in the process of technical renewal of the mission now, and then we'll see later.
All right. Good afternoon. You're having a busy day today, so just to let you know, as soon as I'm done here, we have the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, who will brief you. He's briefing you on the funding crisis that the agency is facing and the upcoming pledging conference that takes place tomorrow. At 1 p.m., you will have the pleasure to hear from the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates, Ambassador Lana Nusseibeh, who, as you know, will preside over the Security Council for the month of June. Thank you. 2 p.m., David Hanif, the Assistant Secretary General for Economic and Social Development, is being joined by Stefan Schweinfest, Director of the Statistics Division, Endesa, and they will present the two most recent policy briefs launched as part of the Secretary General's Our Common Agenda policy brief series. And that's about the international financial architecture and also valuing what counts, framework to progress beyond gross domestic product. You should have received both of those briefing books. I'm sure you'll hear more. I know you will hear more from Paulina today on the PGA. This morning, the Secretary General congratulated Dennis Francis of Trinidad and Tobago on being elected to lead the next session of the General Assembly. He said the President-elect Francis brings a wide range of skills, experience, and knowledge, adding that in addition to his years working closely with multilateral agencies, he also is a respected negotiator and long-serving diplomat. and we shared those remarks with you. I have an update on the Black Sea Initiative, and I can we've been getting quite a few questions recently, and I can tell you that we are concerned about the continuous slowdown of the implementation of the Black Sea Initiative, observed particularly in the month of April and May. In May, 33 vessels departed Ukrainian ports, half of the number compared to the previous month of April. Only 3 of those ships departed from the ports of Yuzhny, Pivdennyi, one of the 3 Ukrainian ports covered under the agreement. Exports in May reached 1.3 million metric tons of grains and other foodstuff. That's less than half of the previous months. The Russian Federation has informed the JCC of its decision to limit registrations to the port of Yuzhny Pivdennyi as long as ammonia is not exported, and currently it's not. Since May 24th, the number of inspection teams at the JCC has been reduced from 3 to 2. The limited registrations and reduced inspection teams contributed to the drop of the average daily inspection rate down to 3. This is a very serious situation. We need to move forward. The initiative is bound for renewal on 17 July. Global hunger hotspots are increasing, as we've been notifying you on a regular basis, and the specter of food inflation and market volatility lurks in all countries. The UN Secretariat has put forward practical suggestions to all parties at the strategic and operational level, keeping in mind the global benefits of the initiative. We will continue our intense engagement with the parties towards the full resumption of operations and continuation of the initiative. In particular, we are looking for commitments on unconditional access of vessels to all 3 ports under the initiative, increase the number of successful inspections completed per day, and predictable registrations to avoid undue delay of vessels, exports of fertilizers, that includes ammonia, and the resumption of the Tolyatti-Odessa ammonia pipeline. We will share all of that in writing with you. Staying on the situation in Ukraine, the humanitarian coordinator there, Denise Brown, condemned today new attacks in Kyiv, which killed civilians, including 1 child. This sadly coincides with the country marking Ukrainian Children's Day. According to UN Office for Human Rights, more than 1,500 children have been killed or injured in Ukraine since February of last year. The war has also had a devastating impact on the mental health and well-being of children, including millions who've had to flee the country for safety, fled, whether they're internally or outside. We, along with our partners, will continue to work to ensure they can receive support they so urgently need. Yesterday, you saw that Secretary General made very brief remarks to the Security Council in close consultations on Sudan, in which he reaffirmed his full confidence in his special representative, Volker Perthes. In a brief statement after consultations, the Secretary General said it is up to the Security Council to decide whether its members support the continuation of the mission for another period or whether they decide it is time to end it. Regarding the situation on the ground, the World Food Programme strongly condemned the looting of the agency's food and assets in El Obeid, south of the capital Khartoum. WFP says the warehouses have come under attack and food for 4.4 million people is at stake. El Obeid hosts one of the WFP's largest logistics base in Africa and is a vital lifeline to millions across Sudan and South Sudan. El Obeid hosts one of WFP's largest logistics base in Africa and is a vital lifeline for millions across Sudan and South Sudan. Despite these challenges, we continue to deliver humanitarian supplies to communities in need. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says more than 24 trucks carrying assistance were on the move in the past 2 days to different locations in the country. At the same time, unfortunately, we continue to face bureaucratic hurdles that limit our ability to bring staff into Sudan and move within the country. We call for expedited visa clearances and waiving permits for internal movements to ensure we have adequate capacity to carry out our critical humanitarian operations, and as you know, millions of people in Sudan need help immediately. For its part, UNHCR continues to have a presence and is working with partners to provide critical assistance where it is still safe to do so, mainly particularly in Kassala, Gedaref, White Nile, and Blue Nile states. Heading south to South Sudan, the peacekeeping mission there, UNMISS, is increasing the number of peacekeepers at the Malakal protection of civilian sites in the Upper Nile state, following violence between communities at a water point, which took place on May 28th. And that violence resulted in one death and several injuries. This week, UNMISS representatives met with the governor of Upper Nile State, among others, to urgently discuss how to mitigate and lower tensions between communities and encourage dialogue and the use of justice institutions to resolve any grievances. The mission is conducting overnight patrols and dispersing gatherings near the site to help ensure safety and security of internally displaced communities as well as returnees. Humanitarian organizations have been providing services to vulnerable communities and internally displaced people, along with basic services, including vouchers to enable families to return to their areas of origin. And just to illustrate the impact of the situation in Sudan on South Sudan, as of May 31st, which would be yesterday, over 89,000 men, women, and children fled Sudan and entered South Sudan, which, as you know, it's facing its own challenges, as we've been saying for quite some time. The peacekeeping mission is supporting the government in South Sudan to diffuse tensions following recent clashes in Renk near the border between the two countries. Turning to Bangladesh, Martin Griffiths, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, has allocated $3 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to support the response to tropical storm Cyclone Maka. As you know, the cyclone wreaked havoc on the Rohingya refugee camps in Bangladesh in mid-May, and of course the host communities, damaging or destroying facilities and the shelters for over 40,000 refugees. With the emergency funding, humanitarian partners will focus on shelter support, infrastructure repair, debris clearance, and the replenishment of relief items. And staying in the country, again, another example of what happens when humanitarian agencies run out of money. World Food Program has been forced to reduce the value of food vouchers for Rohingya refugees from $10 a month to $8 a month. That's less than 9 cents per meal. This is the second time WFP has had to cut rations in just 3 months in that particular area. In March, the food vouchers were cut from $12 to $10 due to the funding crisis. This is yet another example of what happens when there is no money. In this case, nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees who remain completely dependent on humanitarian assistance to meet their basic needs, including food. WFP is urgently appealing for $50 million to restore the food assistance to the full amount of $12. Anything less below that value will have dire consequences not only on nutrition for women and children, but also on education, protection, safety, and security for everyone in the camps. All of us, especially the UN country team in Bangladesh, is very concerned about this particular crisis. The World Meteorological Organization elected Celeste Saulo of Argentina as the new Secretary General of the WMO, and we congratulate her. As you know, she is the first woman to be appointed to this position. Professor Saulo has been the director of the National Meteorological Service of Argentina since 2014, and is currently the first vice president WMO. She takes office on January 1st, 2024, and succeeds Professor Petteri Talas, who completed his two-term mandate and who you know well. Want to flag that today at 1:30 p.m. in the Trusteeship Council, there'll be an annual meeting of the UN Conscious Fashion and Lifestyle Network. I'm going. This year's various industry leaders will be in attendance to discuss attraction, solutions, progress from the fashion and lifestyle sectors to advance the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The meeting is being co-convened by the UN Office of Partnerships and the Fashion Impact Fund. I have a message today for my children, Isabella, Henry, and Julian, because today is the Global Day of Parents. And in a tweet, the Secretary General expressed gratitude to his parents worldwide, committed to raising children in a peaceful and healthy world. And I hope my children do that. And a little electrifying quiz for you today. We have not one, but 3 member states paid up their dues in full. We've discovered one common circuit between the 3, among others. One exports copper, another one exports insulated wire, and the third sells electricity. Okay. I know, Jane stretched the limits on that one. So we thank our friends in the Lao People's Democratic Republic, which exports electricity. We thank our friends in Mongolia, who export copper, and friends in Tunisia, who export copper wires and electric wires. We now have 114 members who have refilled and recharged our batteries. I'm out of puns. Go ahead, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. On the Black Sea Grain Initiative, what efforts are being made by Martin Griffiths, Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General, to try to speed up the ships going in and out of Turkey?
A lot.
And
I mean, the short answer is a lot of efforts are being made to advance the improvement of the working methods of the Joint Coordination Center, which means more ships going in, more inspections going in, as well as reviving the Tolyata-Odessa pipeline. Rebecca Greenspan continues her efforts to facilitate the trade in Russian fertilizer and grain. But we're not the decision makers in this. We're the encouragers, and we're pushing on doors, and we're pushing people, and we're pushing institutions. Our fear, as outlined in what I said, is to see a spike in global food prices, to see volatility. I mean, we saw the positive impact on the monthly food index once the initiative was signed and working. And now things are slowing down.
is there any progress on the ammonia pipeline going to a Black Sea port?
The progress will be when that pipeline is open. We will share that news with you when that happens, hopefully.
And there has been, in a lot of media reports, blame put on the Russian Federation for this slowdown of shipments.
I would go back to. I would go, if I were you, I would go back to the wording of what I just read, which I think makes things clear. Madam.
Thank you, Sherife from Anadolu Agency. Yesterday, the Turkish Director of Communications published on their Twitter account that Secretary General Guterres called the Turkish President Erdogan to congratulate him on his victory. They also mentioned that regional issues were discussed. Can you elaborate on what was really discussed on the phone call? Was the Black Sea Grain Initiative part of the phone call discussions?
I would say that falls under regional issues, but I don't have much more to share with you. Miriam?
Thanks, Steph. The Taliban's foreign ministry published the news reporting a meeting between Roza Otanbayeva and Mottaghi. Do you have any information regarding that meeting?
No, we'll check with. We haven't gotten anything up here. You can check with the mission. We will as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Margaret.
Stefan, the Black Sea. Did the Russians inform of this slowdown due to the ammonia? Did they inform in writing or orally at the JCC, or did they send a letter?
It's. I don't know if it was in writing but the point is that all the decisions are made by consensus around the JCC. Everybody's in the same place, so either ships are authorized or they're not authorized, inspections are authorized or not authorized. So the clarity of the decisions are there.
And on Myanmar, Ban Ki-moon went there in the last day or so. Is there any? He was always very active, obviously, on it when he was here as Secretary General, and now as the elders. I'm just wondering, since there's a vacancy, since Nolene Heiser is leaving her post, would there be any possibility that he might be the new envoy?
I will, as soon as we have clarity on who the new envoy will be, I will let you know, Madame.
Sorry, lost it. On Sudan, if I heard you correctly, you said that looting had affected food assets for some 4.4 million people.
If you don't pay attention to what I say, how do you expect me to pay attention to what I say? Let me go back to those numbers.
Well, the reason I ask is because we had some reporting from the region about 20 tons from North Kordofan, which I don't know my geography that well. I don't know if south of the capital is the same as North Kordofan. But anyways, our reporting from the region, citing sources, said, a lot of food, but it was done by the Rapid Support Forces. Is that something that you can confirm as well? And maybe just put it into perspective. I mean, that's 20 tons is what we heard. That's a huge amount, right?
It's a lot. And maybe WFP has more information on who exactly did the looting. But at the end of the day, the food is warehouses are being looted. When you do that, it is not only a criminal act, it's an immoral act. You're stealing food from people who urgently need it. You're destroying humanitarian property when millions of your country folk also need it. It's just unacceptable. Evelyn and then Joe.
Just a point of information. Why are inspections being reduced on the Black Sea?
As we said, the Russians have been. I mean, go back to the words that I said. The Russian Federation has informed us of its decision to limit registration to the port of Yuzhny, Pivdennyi, as long as ammonia is not exported. Joe. And then I'll go Stefano, and then we have to go to our guest.
Yeah, there have been reports in the last couple of days that the Houthis have complained that they were given very short notice of the arrival of the salvage ship for the transfer of oil. Number one, can you comment on whether there's truth to that? And secondly, to what extent are the Houthis now cooperating with the operation?
I have no specific information on. I can't speak to the state of mind, the frame of mind. We had a pretty extensive briefing by Mr. Gressly and Mr. Steiner on it. All the parties involved are informed, and so far things are moving, which means that we have the cooperation of all those that we need cooperation from. Murad, and we'll do Murad, Stefano, and Linda, and then I have to go.
Thank you, Stephen. The SCG requested from the members of the Security Council yesterday to support his envoy to Sudan, but it seems there is no unity on that. I mean, at least one member of the Council supports the mission, but not the envoy. In light of this situation, will the SCG keep his envoy?
I think the Secretary General was very clear. In his area of responsibility, he fully supports his special representative. The Security Council has its own responsibilities. There are intense discussions going on. I don't want to prejudge the outcomes, but I think the Secretary General didn't use many words yesterday, but I think he was very clear in what he was trying to say. Stefano and then Linda.
Yes. According to the Norwegian Refugee Council, Burkina Faso is the world's most neglected crisis. They just published this, especially about the displacement people. Do you agree with that?
Burkina Faso is one of the most neglected and forgotten crises. We have been repeatedly bringing that issue up here at the briefings, and our humanitarian colleagues have as well. Humanitarian appeals is, like many of them, is critically underfunded. Ms. Fasulo.
Thank you, Steph. This is going back to Sudan, and I hope you didn't provide this already. But the question is, how do things stand in terms of, looting situation, stealing? I mean, is that being dealt with in any way?
I just, look at what is going on with WFP. It remains a place that is not 100% safe for humanitarian workers, not safe for humanitarian resources and stocks. Despite that, our colleagues on the ground and partners, Sudanese partners, are doing an amazing job in trying to figure out where they can actually work. I mean, WFP on one hand is distributing food. On the other hand, some of their warehouses are being looted. It's in an active conflict zone with most likely some pretty weak command and control on the ground, which means you have a lot of men, because my assumption is they're mostly men, running around with guns.
Is there any security outside security?
No, I mean it's not a peacekeeping mission, so it's not as if we talk about in certain areas where we have peacekeeping missions, we have peacekeepers who can provide some security, but it is the responsibility of the parties to protect humanitarian work. And it should go without saying that this is humanitarian work to help Sudanese people. It is their responsibilities of those who have guns to ensure that instead of using those guns on humanitarian staffers, on humanitarian property, to actually turn those guns around and protect humanitarian workers and protect humanitarian resources. Speaking of humanitarian resources, I'm going to get Philippe Lazzarini, and I will see you later.
I'm Stefan, and our guest today is from UNRWA. All right, let's start with the General Assembly today. Member states, as you know, elected by acclamation Mr. Denis Francis as the president of the 78th session of the General Assembly. In his congratulatory remarks, President Chaba Kuroshi noted that Mr. Francis brings almost 40 years of experience in Trinidad and Tobago's diplomatic service. His vision for the 78th session, peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability, offers a comprehensive view of the work of the General Assembly, the President said, given its focus on climate change and sustainability. But the President also noticed, the current President, also noted that there are still 100 days left in his term, and he is going to spend those days acting on the game changers that came out of the UN Water Conference. He also wants to continue to promote the use of science for a sustainability transformation, particularly as preparations continue for the SDG summit during UNGA. And then, of course, the 16 negotiating processes are still underway, including one on GA revitalization. And the full remarks that the President gave are with you. As is tradition, after the new president-elect was selected, the Secretary General then drew lots to decide the seating arrangement in the General Assembly Hall for the 78th session. Let's do a little pop quiz. What is the first member state that is going to be seated? Yes, Evelyn.
When is the actual switchover? How long will we still see you?
All right. So the switchover will happen on the 5th of September. You're stuck with me until then. And then in terms of the seating arrangement, that is North Macedonia. Member states also today elected by acclamation the General Assembly vice presidents from the African group, that is Congo, Gambia, Morocco, Senegal, Uganda, and Zambia. From the Asia-Pacific states, Islamic Republic of Iran, Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Uzbekistan. From the Eastern European group, Estonia. From Latin America and the Caribbean states, that's Bolivia and Suriname. Western Europe and other states, Iceland, and Kingdom of the Netherlands. So those plus the P5 of the Security Council make up the vice presidents of the General Assembly for the 78th session. This hour, President Koroshi is probably listening in on a roundtable about Security Council reform. This is a side event done in the trusteeship. It's organized by the permanent missions of Brazil, India, South Africa, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This afternoon, the President will be meeting with Layan Sharkawi and Ahmed Abu Daka. These are two Palestinian refugees who are studying at UNRWA, and you'll hear from them directly tomorrow at the UNRWA pledging event. And today's PGA election is not the only one in the UN community. President Koroshi today congratulated the new head of the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, Professor Celeste Saulo, the first ever woman elected to that role. And I wanted to clarify something. I've been seeing in the media that some of the journalists are saying that the theme for UNGA 78 is the SDGs. It's not. As you know, the theme for UNGA is selected by the president-elect, so there has not been a theme announced yet. So just wanted to clarify that in your reporting. Any questions for me, Pam?
I apologize if I missed it. Who got the first seat in the lottery?
North Macedonia.
North Macedonia. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Paulina, when do they decide who the new members of the Credentials Committee will be for the next session?
I think that's usually in November, isn't it? It's around that time.
After the new session starts, they decide.
Oh, I see.
You know, for the 78th session,
yeah,
who will
isn't
be the
it?
committee
Isn't that when they
members?
first meet?
Is that it? Okay, and they
Actually,
decide
I'm
then?
lying.
I
I'm lying, and
remember.
I don't know. I shouldn't be.
Okay.
I
Send
shouldn't
me a
be
note if
talking.
you know.
Let me find out. Let me find out. All right. Let me check if there's anything in the chat. Nope, nothing in the chat. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for joining us here today. It's great to see all of you at the UAE's presidency for the second time in our term. My name is Shahad Matar, and I'm the spokesperson from the UAE's mission. We are joined here today by our permanent representative of the UN, Ambassador Lana Naseba, and our deputy representative, Ambassador Mohammed Abu Shahab, and our political coordinator, Ghasaq Shaheen. Before I begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping matters. One, today's press conference will be conducted entirely in English. And two, I'll be taking questions in groups of 3 at a time. And 3, just remember that anything shared today relating to the program of work and scheduling will, of course, be said in her capacity as President of the Security Council, and other issues will be in her national capacity. For now, I'll turn it over to Ambassador Naseba, who will brief you on the June program of work and the UAE's priorities for the month. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Shahad, and hello and good afternoon, all of you. I was hoping that the lunch hour would take many of you away to eat, but obviously this is going to be an interesting press conference. So thank you all for joining us and for your interest in the work of the Security Council this month. As Shahad has just said, the UAE is assuming its presidency for the second time during our term. As the first time, it is still a time of deep division and polarization. So the UAE will continue to aim to play a constructive role to build bridges and find space for agreement and consensus on the numerous important and critical files on the Security Council's agenda. So that is the philosophy of our approach this month. Today, of course, as Shahad has said, anything that I relay related to the program of work and scheduling, I will be saying in my capacity as President of the Council. Everything else that I respond to or say as the UAE is in my national capacity, so please bear that in mind so that I stay on good terms with Council members. You have in front of you the program of work, I think, for the month of June that I'm happy to say was adopted earlier today. If it's not in front of you, it is distributed here in the room and also available online on our website at uaeun.org. And we will be posting a lot of information during our Presidency Month on that website, so please do save it on your phones. If you look at the program of work, you can see it's going to be a very busy month, as the month of June often is, and we hope that it will also be fruitful and results-oriented. We will meet on a number of country-specific files on the Council's agenda for this month, so Afghanistan, Central Africa, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Gulf of Guinea, Iraq, Libya, Mali, the occupied Palestinian territory, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. There will also be briefings on the UN Disengagement Observer Force, or UNDOF, and the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals. So we're going to have 17 briefings in total, 2 TCC meetings, 1 debate, 1 open debate, 13 closed consultations, and 1 informal interactive dialogue on the program of work, as well as 7 adoptions, 6 of which concern Council mandates. Those are Libya, UNITAM's ATMIS, DRC sanctions, MINUSMA, and UNDOF. In addition, the UK and the UAE as co-pen holders have been partnering with Council members of the Council to adopt a resolution this month on tolerance and international peace and security. As the UAE, and here I'll speak to our priorities as Council President at this point, we really want to bring a particular focus on key priorities during our presidency through the 3 signature events that we will host. I'd really like to take a couple of minutes to walk you through those events and explain why we've chosen to elevate those issues and bring them to the Council's attention. And then, of course, I will leave lots of time today for questions and answers. So on the 13th of June, we'll host a signature event on climate change, peace and security. This ministerial-level open debate will be chaired by our Minister of Climate Change and the Environment, Her Excellency Miriam Al-Muhairi, who's been to the Council many times before during our term. And this is really because, as the Secretary General has said, climate change is the defining challenge of our time. Its scale, its complexity, and the responses it demands are really unprecedented. And in terms of the Council's mandate, we've seen clearly how climate change impacts its ability to maintain international peace and security. So many of the discussions on the Council's agenda speak to this alarming dynamic, and that will be the core focus of our meeting. We will have a discussion that is informed by accounts from peacekeeping and special political missions. We aim to underscore how climate change has been, is, and will continue to directly impact the Council's ability to carry out its mandate. But we also believe that the impacts of climate change on international peace and security require a carefully calibrated role for the Security Council, and our ambition is that this event will help to continue to build a common view on what this role could be in the future. And of course, there are many views on the Council as to this topic, but we really feel there is wide support from the membership to continue highlighting its critical importance to peace and security. And of course, as many of you know, the UAE is also serving as the incoming president and host of COP28. That meeting will be held from the 30th of November to 12th December this year. It's a process. And we're really honored to be hosting COP28, not only because it's an existential issue for all countries, including the countries of the Middle East, but because we hope to be able to contribute with our long-standing experience in the field of climate change and renewable energy to the deliberations. So we approach that role with humility, a great sense of responsibility, but also the urgency that this topic requires. On the 14th of June, we will host a ministerial-level meeting on the values of human fraternity in promoting and sustaining peace. It will be chaired by a senior UAE minister, and we will be briefed by the Secretary General of the UN, by Ahmed Al-Tayyib, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, and a civil society representative. This event couldn't be timelier in our view. It's a time where the world is experiencing the highest number of armed conflicts since 1945. And across the globe, we're seeing a rising and increasingly worrying rise in intolerance, hate speech, racism, and extremism, all of which undoubtedly fuel violence and divide communities. And these are threats to international peace and security, and they're not limited to a single country or region. The Council has not always consistently addressed hate speech, racism, and other forms of extremism as threat multipliers that drive the outbreak, escalation, and recurrence of conflict. So we think this is an opportunity to elevate that issue. It's already being discussed across the UN system in numerous forums, and it's a key priority for us during our term to push for that more consistent and effective approach. We think the world urgently needs political leaders to renew their commitment to peace, tolerance, and human fraternity, and their action should be reinforced by a whole-of-society approach centered on these shared values. So the participation of different leaders in the meeting, of influential religious leaders who've worked tirelessly to address hate speech, racism, and intolerance is an acknowledgement, in our view, of our common humanity. We see extremism and the extremist narratives that can take root easily through misinformation and disinformation as a nefarious scourge of our time, and it's spreading rapidly via the internet and social media. So we think that education, interfaith dialogue, community dialogue really has to step up and play a key role in countering it. We hope in this meeting that the Security Council will unite around a powerful recognition of the need to therefore step up our efforts on promoting tolerance and combating extremism. On the 8th of June, we will host a briefing on enhancing cooperation between the UN and the League of Arab States. It will be chaired by His Excellency Khalifa Shaheen, Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Secretary General of the UN, as well as His Excellency Ahmed Abul Ghait, Secretary General of the Arab League, will brief. And we've also invited a youth civil society briefer from the region because we think the perspective of youth in our region is so critically important. During the UAE's last presidency in March 2022, the Council adopted a presidential statement welcoming the strong cooperation between the UN and the Arab League and expressed its intention to further strengthen this vital partnership. The statement also reaffirmed the important role of women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in the prevention and resolutions of conflicts and in peace building, as well as the positive contribution of youth. So this month, with this meeting, we will continue to build on those commitments by exploring further opportunities for collaboration in a number of critical areas for our region. These, of course, will include promoting the role of women and youth, combating terrorism and extremism, and fostering a culture of tolerance to strengthen and sustain regional peace and stability. And we'd also like to emphasize the potential for cooperation in the region on humanitarian relief efforts. As we've seen, unfortunately, that cooperation needs to step up and be more coherent across the system. So by organizing this meeting, we aim to reiterate the importance of Arab-led solutions for regional challenges and for regional solutions to regional challenges as a whole, and to advocate for institutionalizing the UN League of Arab States relationship, recognizing that the full potential of this partnership has not yet been realized. You may also be aware that from 19th to 20th June, high-level representatives from member states will be in New York for the third United Nations High-Level Conference on Counterterrorism, organized by the UN Office of Counterterrorism, the UNOCT. We will be obviously linking up discussions in the Security Council in our role as chair of the CT committee to that important high-level week. We will also maintain an updated, unofficial, interactive program of work of the Security Council on our website, which I didn't give you earlier. It's uaeun.org, and it will contain all our activities, formal and informal. It'll be available in both English and Arabic, and we will also ensure that sign language interpretation will be available for at least 2 council meetings this month. It's a new innovation in the council, but we aim to be as inclusive as possible. As a signatory to the Statement of Shared Commitments on Women, Peace and Security, we're working hard to ensure the participation of diverse women civil society briefers in the council during our presidency. This month, we'll encourage all briefers to include relevant gender analysis in their briefings, have a WPS, Women, Peace and Security focus on a country-specific meeting, and, of course, hold a joint WPS stakeout. We're also very committed to sharing updated and timely information with the press, and we look forward to interacting with you as much as possible this month through our spokesperson, through our PC team, our deputy ambassadors, myself, and of course I will be stopping regularly on the way into council meetings to give you updated information where I can. So with that, I will stop and take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I see a lot of hands there, but I would keep with the UN tradition and start with our UNCA president, Valerie. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ambassador, for this press conference. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondent Association, we wish you the best of luck on the busy month ahead. So, Valeria Robeco from ANSA Newswire. My question is on Sudan, and in particular on the UN mission in the country. So yesterday the Secretary General said that it's up to the Council, to the Security Council, to decide whether to support the continuation of the mission for another period or decide that it's time to end it. So my question is, do you expect any outcome on this matter anytime soon from the Council? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I believe we'll take Frank. I think you had your hand up, and then Miriam. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Ambassador. Congratulations, Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. On the 14th, what you just presented, maintenance of international peace and security, values of human fraternity in promoting and sustaining peace. My question is, does the human fraternity for world peace and living together document that you presented include protection against the criminalization of the LGBTQIA community? And in your national capacity, what do you think about the new legislation approved in Uganda that includes the death penalty for being gay?
Okay, thank you. Miriam?
Thank you so much, Shahad, and thank you for your time and this briefing today, and good luck with the busy month ahead. I have a question regarding the deteriorating women's rights situation in Afghanistan, and I know you have been very active in the past months. The continued oppression of women by the Taliban has resulted in restrictions like even their inability to work with the UN offices. Will the Security Council prioritize the issue during your presidency this month? Additionally, considering the apparent disregard of the Taliban towards condemnation and resolutions, what steps should be taken next? And also, the Taliban have delivered their interest again at their meeting yesterday with Rosa Otunbayeva about the recognition. In your role and as the co-pen holder and in your national capacity, do you believe that the eventual recognition of the Taliban is a possibility in near future? And regarding Iran, Russia continues using Iranian UAVs in
That's more than one question, my friend. Nice try, though. We'll stop at those three.
Okay. Go ahead, Ambassador.
I'll start with the question on Sudan. Thank you for asking it. I think it's critical, of course, that we all keep Council attention on Sudan and that we find a way to halt the hostilities, encourage a return to dialogue in coordination with the Sudanese people and their aspirations and with the Sudanese authorities. So regional and international leaders have clearly been working around the clock to try and de-escalate the crisis since the outbreak of violence in April. And Council members have actually met on the subject more than 5 times and continue to have both formal and informal meetings, including, of course, yesterday's briefing at the request of the Secretary General. And I think that was a very productive briefing. It's a format that in our presidency we will continue to encourage. And we really see operationalizing the work of the Council and having frank exchange with the UN system as a really useful way of advancing the work of the Security Council. In terms of the UNITAM's mandate, I think what came out of the meeting, and I know the Secretary General also spoke to the press afterwards, what I can say is that what came out of the meeting was a very strong commitment from Council members to the essential work of the United Nations on the ground in this crisis. I think that was incredibly clear. The situation is quite dire. 1.4 million people, according to the IOM, have been internally displaced. The numbers of refugees going to neighboring countries is high. The UAE has organized several evacuation flights in our national capacity. We have over 1,000 people we've evacuated from Sudan, 29 planes, several shipments of humanitarian aid. We've announced $50 million in humanitarian aid that we'll be dispensing through various means. So the situation is dire, and the international system do need to come together to help support peace and stability in Sudan for the neighboring region as well. Now, there have been some outside UN efforts, and they must be supported. And those are primarily those of the African Union, IGAD, and the trilateral mechanism, and they had a positive meeting this weekend. Of course, the Arab League has also expressed its position on the situation in Sudan and is aiming to help de-escalate, and the work of the UN system, which isn't only UNITAMS, but several UN agencies on the ground who are trying to operate in very challenging circumstances. So I think to come back to what came out of the meeting and is an expression of support for the ceasefire agreement, despite recent reports that it is holding or not holding. I think we're all committed to maintaining that it is extended, and we're appreciative of Saudi Arabia and the United States' efforts in facilitating that, and an essential support for the AU and its key role in helping de-escalate the situation in Sudan. In terms of the meeting, there was support for UNITAMS and support for the UN's presence on the ground in Sudan to help with the neighboring country situation, but also to help on the ground in Sudan. To answer the specifics of your question, it is expected that we will, as a council, renew and extend the renewal of the mandate of UNITAMS. That is currently under discussion. I don't want to preview the final outcome, but it is expected, and there's a lot of support in the council for that. And I think we will also see a council position on the situation, reinforcing all of those efforts that I just mentioned. I'm going to go next to Afghanistan. So, as you know, Afghanistan, thank you for your words. As you know, Afghanistan is a file where the UAE is a co-pen holder with Japan, and where I think, as you've noted, will continue to keep us very occupied as a council on this very, very important topic. We have this month a regular meeting on the situation in Afghanistan scheduled for the 21st of June, which will be informed by the Secretary General's latest report on the situation. That's due on June 16th to the Council. So that will inform the deliberations. Since our last regular meeting in March, as you've noted, there has been Council unity on the subject of Afghanistan. The resolution 2681, and then, of course, the commissioning of an independent assessment of the situation in Afghanistan. Ambassador Feridun was appointed, our former colleague from Turkey, to lead that review, and will be reporting back to the Council in November. The Secretary General held a retreat of envoys in Doha, which I attended, and which was a very productive meeting as well, and vital for keeping the international community coalesced around the situation of Afghanistan. So I think this does remain high on our agenda. The assessment that was mandated in Resolution 2679 is running its course. Ambassador Feridun is actually in New York this week and next, conducting bilateral meetings with missions. He's been in several capitals, and we're really getting behind his work on that as well. So I think we are going to keep our focus on Afghanistan, in particular the position that the Council expressed on women's rights in Afghanistan was unequivocal, and by consensus. It was unanimously adopted, and I think that is a really strong sign that we need to keep the momentum going on Afghanistan in the coming period, because it is an essential file. So the UAE will play its part both as a council member, but also in terms of the presidency, to ensure that we keep our cohesion on that file. To the last question, which was Frank on the human fraternity, of course, and then there was a sub-question on Uganda. So I think, again, I don't want to preview a resolution that council members are currently discussing. The resolution emphasizes the importance of protecting and promoting international human rights. The resolution reaffirms the importance of and upholding of full respect for human rights and the rule of law as important elements in the fight against all forms of intolerance. So I think bearing in mind this is a council resolution that is under debate, that is as much as I can say, but there is a lot of human rights language in the draft resolution, and we are continuing our discussions on that. And the UAE is very committed to seeing that human rights language as part and parcel of a important document that is overall really related to addressing issues that impact international peace and security in a very key way. And I think that this is still, again, as I said in my opening remarks, the issue of tolerance, of understanding of each other is really something that lies at the heart in many situations of conflict, and the peace and sustainability of conflict prevention relies on how communities see each other and see their differences. So, we've seen in the past hate speech provoking atrocity crimes. It's not only a form of expression, it can actually lead directly to atrocity crimes like in Rwanda, like in the former Yugoslavia, where incitement to hatred of the UN affects peacekeepers on the ground who are carrying out really important work. So it is a peace and security issue. The protection of minority groups is essential. And we've had to be, of course, careful in the drafting of the resolution to keep it within the context of the Security Council's mandate. And I think that's what you'll see emerging from what I hope will be a productive discussion and adoption. But we're excited to bring this topic to the Council's attention. The UN itself is releasing its own UN action plan on hate speech with the Special Advisor for the prevention of genocide. And we've had numbers of meetings with her where I think there's a lot of groundswell of support from the UN system that hate speech is becoming a root cause, recognized as a root cause of conflict and violence in many settings. On the question on Uganda, the UAE, neither as president or as the UAE, will comment on other countries' domestic legislation. So I suggest you refer your question to Uganda.
Thank you. The guy in the blue, and then Pamela.
Thank you. Joseph Klein, Canada Free Press. In both your national capacity and your capacity this month as president of the Security Council, do you think that the threats that have come from Iran and the actions that Iran has taken regarding maritime shipping in the Persian Gulf, the seizure of 2 tankers, etc., belongs on the Security Council agenda? And if so, do you have any plans to try to introduce that issue within the framework of any of the items that are currently on the agenda, or perhaps adding it to the agenda?
Could you repeat the first part related to Iran?
Yeah, well...
the issue of maritime security.
Yeah, the issue is, and the UAE has expressed specifically some deep concerns about this, the threats from Iran and the actions Iran has taken in the seizure of oil tankers and interference with maritime shipping and international waters in the Persian Gulf.
Okay, Pamela?
Thank you,
And then
Shahad.
Edith.
And thank you, Ambassador. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. We're looking forward to the month. My question is about the meeting on the 13th on climate. You had in your concept papers said that the Minister of Climate is coming. Is there any possibility that as the new president designate of COP28 that Sultan Al-Jaber would be here? And how you mentioned things like that it can be the problems with climate can be exploited by terrorists. How urgent do you think the climate agenda is right now? Because we're getting a report every day about how everything is disastrous. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Edith?
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. 2 quick follow-ups and a question. The UNITAM's mandate expires on Saturday. Are you expecting a vote tomorrow and possibly a very short rollover? Secondly, Ukraine is not on this schedule. What are you expecting on Ukraine? And my question is that about artificial intelligence.
I think we're Edith, so that we are allowed to reach the entire press briefing.
To be fair, you got 2 in though.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll take one more.
Yeah, go ahead. You.
Sorry about the delay. Thank you, Evelyn Leopold. There's been an outcry, speaking of COP28, there's been an outcry from NGOs about your country and Mr. Al-Jaber heading COP28 because he is also head of one of the world's largest oil companies. Has this affected you at all in trying to have a UN meeting on the subject?
Thank you for all those easy questions. So, Edith, first of all, on Sudan, I don't want to preview what the Council is going to do, but as President, we are prepared to schedule a meeting for an adoption of the rollover of UNITAM's mandate. So that, as a President, we are prepared for that. We'll be prepared for many things for this month. And as the UAE, we're optimistic that that might happen. On Ukraine, there are no mandated scheduled meetings in any month on Ukraine. But of course, as President, any country that requests a meeting on any subject will be considered by the presidency and scheduled accordingly. So I imagine that Ukraine will be requested during this month as well. So those are the 2 questions you asked. On artificial intelligence, let's have a long lunch and talk about that. I have many things to say about that.
I was just going to ask, I'm sure a lot of us would like to know whether we could be back here Saturday for a vote on UNITAMs.
The schedule just came out. It's on.
The schedule came out, and the vote is scheduled for tomorrow. So hopefully, as President, I would like to say that I will do my best to preserve all of our weekends. I've made that commitment to my children as well. What did Steph say? It was Parents' Day today or something. Exactly. So I will do my best. So it's scheduled for tomorrow, and I think you'll see also a Council product on that in addition to the rollover. On the question regarding COP and climate, let me start by saying that, first of all, the UAE is a country that has a long-standing commitment to the issue of climate change. This is a region that experiences extreme temperatures, scarce fresh food and water, that is projected by several studies to potentially be uninhabitable in 50 years. So climate change is as existential for us as it is for many countries in the global south who talk about this issue. And so we've consistently and constantly led the region in climate action because we know this, and that's why the urgency. Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, who I have worked with for numerous years, actually, firstly in my capacity as head of the International Renewable Energy Agency Task Force, which is hosted in Abu Dhabi. He led that campaign, and I worked with him there, is really uniquely positioned, in our view, to achieve a meaningful and ambitious agenda in this COP28. He has a long-standing record as a climate and renewables man, well before he took over his chairmanship of ADNOC. And his appointment at ADNOC, and I will speak to that question, his mandate, he was asked to future-proof ADNOC because in terms of the UAE's perspective, we would welcome, as our president has said, the last barrel of oil being drawn out of our country. We welcome the transition to clean energy. We think this is a vital, important issue to us. So I think, the UAE is the first nation that's signed on the Paris Climate Accord. We've built 3 of the world's largest solar projects. We've continued to finance sustainable technologies through major bilateral initiatives, including most recently with the United States, and we will continue to finance the transition to renewable energy. We're one of the world's largest investors in renewable energy, more than $50 billion in existing projects, more than $50 billion in future initiatives across 70 countries. And this has really been the legacy in many ways of Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, but also of the UAE's leadership. This has been a long-standing policy. So we're looking for a really inclusive COP. We welcome the criticism and the debate of what we need to do at COP28. This is something that is not an easy set of negotiations to conduct. And I think that, he's been on a listening tour. He's listened to a number of countries about what can and can't be achieved this year. But our goal is resolute. Let's be ambitious. Let's try to get it done. Let's focus on the outcome. So please judge the UAE on what it can deliver this year. And let's focus our energy on that. At the same time, it's going to be inclusive, and we have opened up the COP28 to the full participation of views from NGOs, from youth, from energy activists. We welcome the full spectrum. We want everyone's opinion. And this will turbocharge, we believe, the energy that is needed to deliver the ambitious COP that we want to achieve. And that's why also we brought it to the attention of the Security Council and why we're hosting this debate. Some people will say that the Security Council is not the right place for it, but I think the interlinkages we have been seeing over the years, you heard this morning with Steph about the cyclone in Myanmar, drought in Somalia, the exacerbation of climate on peace and security situations is irrefutable. So let's look at the linkages in a non-ideological way, in a practical way. Let's operationalize our approach to climate, peace, and security. I think that's what we're trying to do with this discussion, is bring it up to the Council's attention, and we hope and welcome high-level participation at that meeting. Someone asked if Sultan would be coming. He has already come to New York a couple of times. He went to Washington for the spring meetings because he and his team and the COP team are looking very strongly at how reform of the IFIs can also turbocharge the change and the transition to clean energy that we want to see. And he's been on a listening tour of much of the world, talking to world leaders about what we're trying to achieve this year at COP. He will be back in New York. He has committed to that. But he's also committed to playing the role of COP28 president in as neutral way as possible so that he can help steer the negotiations successfully. And I'll let you know when he is back. I know he would be keen to engage with all of you.
Not for the meeting here, right?
No, that will be chaired by our Minister of Climate Change, and Dr. Sultan will be back. Now, on the security, maritime security, I think the UAE has had a long-standing commitment to the safety of navigation. 1/5 of the world's oil passed through the Straits of Hormuz, and at a time of increasing energy prices, that's a big responsibility. We've had a long-standing responsibility and commitment to safeguarding maritime security. With regards to what is on the agenda, I think that there's nothing scheduled for the month of June, but it is clear that this topic of international peace and security in maritime waters remains essential. Ghana has asked us to organize a meeting on that topic in the Gulf of Guinea, maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea, and that will be discussed in the Council's agenda in June. And we will continue to maintain that the best way to ensure a de-escalated, peaceful region in our part of the world is dialogue and diplomacy. So those are the channels we are looking at in terms of maintaining security in our region. Of course, these threats to maritime security concern all of us. They're global threats, and of course we will keep focus on them. But I think dialogue and de-escalation is going to be our approach.
Why wouldn't you want to add to that the specific threats in the Persian Gulf?
You can't take the floor before
I'll
I'm
answer.
giving
That's okay. That's all right. But don't all of you do it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to sit with you and have a longer discussion about security in the Persian Gulf. It's a critical issue. As President of the Council, as you've looked at the program of work, it is full. And this is not an issue that is scheduled to be discussed. But the issue of Iran, the issue of the JCPOA discussions, the issue of maritime peace and security, these are all ongoing issues that Gulf countries are working around and working around with each other. I think you've seen from our foreign policy posture that our approach is dialogue, de-escalation, and diplomacy. And we think that is the way forward for our region. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to be fair to the people in the back, so you go ahead. Yes?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. My name is Susan Tehrani from WION News India. Recently, the national security advisors of India, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States met in Saudi Arabia, and there is a lot of talk that perhaps a second Quad is in the making in the Middle East. Of course, you are part of the I2U2. I was wondering if you could comment on that. There is a lot of excitement regarding that in our region.
Okay. Thank you. You, and then you. Okay. Go ahead.
Amélie Bottelier from AFP News Agency. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. One of the issue in the schedule in June is the renewal of the MINUSMA. The Secretary General review in January presented 3 options which are really widely opposed. I mean, from an extension of the mission with more peacekeepers to very narrow mission. So is there any kind of discussion that already have been taken place to show in which direction the Council is going to go? Thank you.
One more question. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Toshi Inaba from Kyoto News, a Japanese news wire. I wish you good luck on the presidency. Correct me if I were wrong, but I heard some member state is calling for a meeting on the DPRK to be held tomorrow. Can you confirm that, or is it not going to happen for this time around? Thanks.
So I'm hearing a lot of questions about whether our weekend will be preserved. Yes, a request has been made for a discussion of the situation in the DPRK in light of the recent attempted launch. So the Council we will consult with Council members in terms of the scheduling, but a request has been made and will be duly considered by the Presidency.
I'm sorry. Can you confirm which country made the request?
No, I won't be able to do that unless it's public, but I think there will be a stakeout on the issue, and I think it'll be clear there which countries are calling for the request. So I think a number of countries will call for the meeting, and they will be making a press statement likely today at some point. I'll keep you posted. I don't want to preview them. Do you want to speak to MINUSMA? Or yeah. And then there was a question from India. Okay. On MINUSMA, sorry, who was asking me the question on MINUSMA? Yeah, hi. So on MINUSMA, I think it's a complex file. We have a meeting on the 16th of June that is scheduled where we will hear from the SRSG, El-Ghassim Wane. He'll brief the Council. And I expect we will then renew the mandate of MINUSMA by the end of the month. I think it's a complex file. The relationship between the host country and the organs of the UN is really paramount, and we need to really be working together in these circumstances to continue to counter the human toll that the conflict is taking. 17,000 peacekeepers have been deployed to Mali under this mandate from the Council, and we need to also make sure that their operating environment is secure. So it's an important file. We will consult. We are consulting. The pen holder is consulting widely, and we expect a renewal of the mandate at the end of the month.
I can just add.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.